Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. Beneath the surface of the Earth, there are places where stone is restless, where the crust does not lie still but bends, buckles and breathes with the slow rhythm of molten fire. One such place is not a mountain as you might imagine, but an enormous cauldron of land itself, spread wide and heavy, as if the earth had pressed its palm against its own skin. Scientists call it a caldera, a hollow formed not by the rise of stone, but by the fall of ground after a tremendous eruption. These are the hidden giants, the supervolcanoes, and their silence is as powerful as their fire. To imagine a supervolcano is to imagine a force beyond measure. Unlike the familiar cones of Mount Fuji or Vesuvius, a supervolcano does not rise with elegance into the clouds. Instead, it crouches low, vast and deceptive, its edges softened by valleys and forests, its crater filled with lakes or meadows. Beneath, however, lies a chamber swollen with molten rock stretching for miles, a sea of liquid stone waiting in stillness. Yellowstone in North America, Toba in Indonesia, Taupo in New Zealand, La Garita in Colorado. These are names that stir quiet awe, for each has changed the history of life upon Earth. In the deep past, some of these supervolcanoes awakened. Their eruptions were not explosions that painted the sky for a few days, but cataclysms that reshaped climates, altered ecosystems, and pressed fingerprints into the story of evolution. The scale is hard to hold in the mind. Where a regular volcano might eject a few cubic kilometers of ash, a supervolcano can release thousands. Imagine the sky filled not just with smoke, but with a veil of fine particles that drift across continents, dimming the sun, turning days to twilight. Imagine entire seasons changed, as if Earth itself decided to draw the curtain and let the stage cool. When such an eruption occurs, the violence is unimaginable. The ground swells like breath held too long, fractures rip through rock like veins in glass, and then, with sudden release, the Earth exhales. Columns of ash and gas shoot tens of miles into the sky, higher than storms, higher than jetliners, into the very boundaries of the atmosphere. Lightning dances within the rising cloud, sparked by the friction of ash grains. The roar cannot be described as sound alone. It is pressure, force, vibration felt in bones and stone alike. Forests vanish beneath blankets of pumice, rivers choke on mud flows, landscapes are erased and remade, but the greatest consequence does not lie at the eruption site. It lies in the air above all of us. When a supervolcano releases its breath, the atmosphere becomes its canvas. Ash spreads like ink in water circling the globe. Sulfur dioxide rises and reacts with moisture, forming tiny reflective droplets that scatter sunlight back to space. The Earth grows dimmer. This dimming is called volcanic winter. Crops fail, seasons shift, rain patterns falter. For years, even decades, the planet remembers the eruption in its climate, as though the mountain's sigh lingers in every wind. Scientists believe one of the most powerful of these events happened about 74,000 years ago at Lake Toba in Indonesia. It is said to have been the most explosive eruption of the last 2 million years. The eruption hurled ash across Asia, leaving layers meters thick blanketing India and sending sulfur into the stratosphere. Some researchers suggest that this event may have caused a dramatic cooling, a bottleneck in human populations, reducing the number of people who survived to only a few thousand. Others are cautious, noting that the evidence is still debated. Yet even with uncertainty, the thought that a mountain's breath could have thinned the branches of our family tree is both haunting and humbling. In Yellowstone, scientists peer beneath the ground with tools that use seismic echoes and satellite measurements. They map the hidden chamber, vast as an ocean of molten stone. They study the patterns of uplift, the tremors of tiny quakes, the chemistry of geysers that hiss and steam at the surface. They are not waiting for tomorrow's explosion. Such events are separated by tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of years. But they seek to understand, to imagine what such a future might mean for our fragile civilization. For in our time, the world is interconnected, global, delicate in its balance. A single eruption could ripple through food systems, economies, and societies with startling reach. To listen to the Earth in this way is to feel both small and connected. The story of supervolcanoes is not only the story of destruction, but of cycles. The ash that cools the world also nourishes soils, rich in minerals. The landscapes that are buried one day emerge renewed. Forests springing from fields of pumice, lakes filling the scars of eruptions. Life bends, sometimes breaks, but often returns with unexpected beauty. Evolution itself has been nudged and guided by these fiery events, as though creation and destruction are threads woven together in Earth's design. Imagine standing at the edge of Yellowstone today. The land appears calm, meadows rolling, elk grazing, rivers winding through valleys. Steam rises from hot springs, colourful with strange microbes that thrive in boiling waters. Tourists walk on wooden paths, snapping photographs. Beneath their feet lies one of the largest volcanic systems on the planet, its chamber stretching for miles, a sea of stone waiting in silence. The thought is not meant to frighten, but to remind. The Earth is alive, and we are part of its breathing. To think of supervolcanoes is to think of time on a scale beyond our own. Human history is measured in centuries. Geology is measured in eons. The mountains keep their own rhythm, slow, patient, indifferent to our calendars. The last eruption at Yellowstone was more than 600,000 years ago. To the mountain, that was yesterday. To us, it is an unfathomable stretch. We do not live in fear of tomorrow's eruption, but in awareness of Earth's story, one that began long before us and will continue long after. And so, as we drift through the thought of fire and silence, of breath held deep in stone, we may find not fear but wonder. The planet that carries us is vast, restless, and creative. Its surface cracks, its heart stirs, its breath sometimes escapes in fire. When it does, the world changes. Yet between these breaths lie ages of stillness, meadows and rivers, forests and skies. The mountain that breathes fire is also the mountain that breathes silence, holding within it the dual truth of destruction and renewal. To rest within that truth is to feel the poetry of Earth itself. When we move deeper into the story of supervolcanoes, the focus shifts from eruption itself to the connections it forges across the living world. For though an eruption begins as molten stone breaking free from the Earth's chest, its consequences ripple outward, like circles in water, the ash that rises, the gases that spread, the cooling of skies. Each of these touches life in ways subtle and immense. A forest may vanish in a day, but the memory of that forest lingers in soil, in climate, in the migration of species seeking new ground. It is here in these quiet ripples that we see how intimately the living world is tied to the breathing of the earth. One of the most profound lessons of volcanic winters is how thin the balance of climate truly is. The sun delivers light and warmth across our planet, a steady glow that makes life possible. Yet when the sky is veiled with volcanic aerosols, a fraction of that light is scattered back into space. The temperature dips, crops planted in spring may wither in summer chill, harvests fail, communities that once thrived find themselves counting dwindling stores. In the 17th century, a smaller eruption, Tambora, in 1815, brought what became known as the Year Without a Summer. Snow fell in June in North America, frost touched the fields of Europe, famine spread in Asia, and that was not a supervolcano, only a large but ordinary eruption compared to the titans we speak of. If Tambora could alter the world for a year, imagine what Yellowstone or Toba might do across decades. Yet there is a paradox within this story. The very particles that cool the Earth also carry potential for healing. They remind us that our climate is not immovable but delicately adjustable. Scientists who study geoengineering often look to volcanoes as natural experiments. Could we, by releasing similar particles, mimic the cooling and slow the pace of human-driven warming? The idea is debated with care and concern, for while cooling might ease heat, it could also disrupt rainfall, monsoons, and delicate ecological rhythms. The memory of volcanic winters is both a warning and a question, whispered by the Earth itself. Should we ever attempt to control the sky? The forests that grow after an eruption tell another tale of connection. When ash falls, it buries life in silence, yet within that ash are nutrients, potassium, phosphorus, trace elements that plants crave. In time, seedlings emerge, roots threading through the softened ground, feeding on minerals that once lay locked in stone. Meadows bloom where once there was fire, lakes fill with rainwater reflecting skies above. Birds arrive carrying seeds from distant places. Wolves prowl new forests. Life returns, not identical to what was lost, but woven anew. In this way, supervolcanoes are sculptors, shaping ecosystems across ages, reminding us that endings are rarely final in the Earth's book. There is also the memory kept in ice. Deep within the frozen layers of Antarctica and Greenland, scientists drill for cores of ice that hold within them tiny bubbles of ancient air. These bubbles are time capsules, preserving the whispers of atmospheres long gone. Within these layers, the signature of past eruptions can be read. The sudden spikes of sulfur, the layers of ash carried on winds to the poles. From these records, we know that eruptions of extraordinary scale have darkened skies before, and likely will again. The ice remembers what humans forget. It is the diary of Earth, written in frost and silence, read by those who seek to understand how our climate dances to the beat of fire below. And so we return to the human story, fragile within this greater tale. Imagine a supervolcano erupting in an age not of stone tools, but of satellites and global trade. Planes would be grounded, for no engine can breathe in skies thick with ash. Supply chains would falter as crops fail across continents. Cities would find themselves cooling beneath orange skies. The interconnectedness that makes our world efficient would also make it vulnerable. What one eruption once did to scattered tribes could now ripple across billions. Yet awareness does not have to mean despair. It can mean preparation, resilience, and respect for forces beyond our control. When scientists walk the caldera of Yellowstone, they see not just beauty but storylines written in stone. The uplift of land measured by satellites tells of magma moving like tides below. The steaming of geysers tells of heat pushing water through cracks, a dialogue between fire and surface. Each tremor is a syllable in the Earth's language. To study these signs is to learn to listen, and listening is perhaps the most human thing we can do. For though we cannot silence a mountain, we can attune ourselves to its breathing, finding meaning in its patterns, humility in its scale. The imagination also drifts to the creatures that lived through past winters of ash. Herds of animals migrating to warmer valleys, birds altering their flight paths, insects burrowing deeper into soil. Evolution does not pause for eruptions, it bends with them. Species adapt, some thrive in the cooler years, others vanish. Our own ancestors, huddled in small groups, would have gazed at dim skies and wondered if light would ever return. In those moments, fire was not only destruction but survival, for the hearth was a sun brought down to earth. The memory of those trials may live within us still, in our shared myths of floods, darkness, and renewal. There is poetry too in the silence that follows eruption. When the ash finally settles, when the skies begin to clear, the world feels new. Rivers cut fresh paths through reshaped land, valleys lie buried, and new lakes gleam where craters once sank. To walk such a landscape is to walk upon the edge of Earth's creativity, a place where endings and beginnings blur. The soil beneath your feet is both tomb and cradle. Every blade of grass that grows upon it is a hymn to resilience. Every bird call a reminder that life sings even after silence. And so, in drifting deeper into this story, we see that the mountain that breathes fire and silence is not only a threat but a teacher. It shows us fragility, but also renewal. It demonstrates destruction, but also fertility. It reminds us that our planet is not a backdrop to our lives, but the stage itself, shaping and reshaping the play in which we act. To live with such awareness is to live not in fear but in reverence. The mountain is patient. The earth is vast. We are part of its breath, carried on the same winds that scatter ash, warmed by the same sun that dimmed beneath volcanic skies. And in this truth lies both humility and peace. As the story of the supervolcano reaches its closing arc, we begin to see it not only as a phenomenon of fire and ash, but as a profound reminder of Earth's rhythms, which move far beyond our human sense of time. Each eruption, each sequence, is part of a breathing cycle that has been unfolding for millions of years. When we stand within a caldera meadow, listening to the wind in the grasses, it is easy to forget that the land itself is a scar of fire. Yet that scar has healed into beauty, into forests, into rivers that sing. It reminds us that Earth is always changing, always creating from what was broken. The cooling of the planet after a supervolcano is not the end of warmth, but a pause in the music of climate. The sky veils itself, the sun is softened, and for years the planet drifts in a quieter key. In these years, hardship may come, famine, migration, struggle. Yet with each cycle of darkness there follows a return of light. The atmosphere clears, the sun's warmth returns, and life continues. It is as if the earth whispers, all is impermanent, even the silence of ash. To contemplate this truth is to recognize that even the greatest disruptions give way to balance in time. Supervolcanoes, then, are not just geological events but philosophical teachers. They remind us of our place in the web of existence. They show us that our civilizations, our structures, our plans, though grand, are fragile compared to the forces beneath our feet. Yet they also show us that fragility is not weakness, for within it lies adaptability. Humanity has survived winters of ash, survived famine and cold, and still carried stories forward. Around ancient fires, our ancestors must have told tales of the dimmed sun, of the long nights, of the silence that blanketed the land. Those tales may live still in myths of great floods, of skies darkened, of gods angry and appeased. Memory transforms catastrophe into story, and story becomes a vessel of survival. In modern times, we study supervolcanoes with instruments, not myths, yet the awe remains the same. Satellites measure the swelling of ground. Sensors record tremors too small for human feet to feel. We build models. We simulate skies filled with ash. We chart the cooling of seas. Knowledge is our new fire, our new way of holding back the dark. And yet, for all our instruments, there is humility. We cannot stop a mountain from exhaling. We can only learn, prepare, and adapt. This humility is perhaps the greatest gift of studying supervolcanoes, the reminder that control is an illusion, but understanding is a form of peace. The forests that rise after eruptions tell us about the patience of life. Soil enriched by minerals becomes a cradle for new ecosystems. Lakes that form within calderas shimmer with clarity, drawing creatures to their shores. Flowers bloom where once there was only pumice. The earth is not destroyed by its own fire. It is reshaped, reborn, renewed. In this renewal lies hope. For even if an eruption were to dim the skies, we know that life would continue, bending with the wind, adapting to the cold, waiting for the return of warmth. This patience of nature is something we too can learn. To endure darkness with trust in light is to live in harmony with Earth's rhythms. There is also a strange comfort in scale. The times between supervolcanic eruptions are vast, measured in tens or hundreds of thousands of years. To us, such spans are eternity. To the Earth, they are a heartbeat. This contrast humbles us, but also frees us. For we realize that our daily struggles, our short lifespans, are small threads in a tapestry too large to see in full. The mountains will breathe whether we notice or not. The earth will cool and warm, break and heal with or without our witness. And yet we are here, conscious enough to marvel, to reflect, to find meaning in cycles beyond our reach. To be aware of such scale is itself a kind of miracle. Imagine standing at the rim of Lake Toba, its waters still and vast, stretching across the caldera formed 74,000 years ago. The eruption that created this lake reshaped continents, altered climates, perhaps reduced human populations to a fragile thread. And yet now fishermen cast their nets. Children play on the shore, birds fly overhead. The scar of fire has become a place of life. The story of Toba is written not only in ash, but in water, in resilience, in renewal. To see this is to see the poetry of Earth, that destruction and creation are not opposites but partners in a dance. When we look to Yellowstone, we do not look with dread alone. We look with curiosity, with reverence. The geysers that spray water high into the air, the pools of turquoise and gold, the steaming vents, all are whispers of the power below, but also of its beauty. The microbes that paint the hot springs in brilliant colours are ancient survivors, thriving in heat that would destroy most life. They remind us that even in extremes, life finds a way. Perhaps in the next great eruption, life will bend again, but it will not end. It will adapt, reshape, continue. That is the lesson carried forward from every breath of Earth. And so, as we bring this story to a close, we do so gently, without urgency, without fear. The mountain that breathes fire and silence is not a monster waiting to awaken, but a presence in Earth's deep time, moving slowly, shaping landscapes, teaching us humility. To live with such awareness is to carry both caution and wonder. It is to know that we are fragile but also resilient, that we are temporary but also part of cycles eternal, that silence and fire, destruction and renewal are all threads in the same woven fabric of existence. Let us drift back now from the depths of stone to the softness of the present. The meadow above the caldera sways in the wind. Steam rises from pools that glow with strange colours. Birds sing in branches that grow from soil once buried in ash. The mountain sleeps, and we walk upon its dreaming body. We may not know when it will breathe again, but we know this: the earth is alive, and we are alive with it. And in that shared breath, there is a peace that endures beyond fire, beyond silence, into the quiet eternity of time. When we think of ash, we often imagine a residue, a grey powder left behind after fire has burned away its fuel. Yet volcanic ash is not the end of flame, but its transformation into sky. It is born from fire, but it does not descend quietly like the soot of a hearth. Instead, it rises, lifted by currents of heat that surge from the Earth's hidden furnace. Ash is the language a volcano writes into the atmosphere, a script carried by winds across mountains, oceans, and continents. When a supervolcano exhales, its ash does not merely touch the sky, it paints it with colours, with veils, with moods that ripple across the world. To understand volcanic ash is to hold something paradoxical. Each grain is small, sometimes finer than dust, yet together they become powerful enough to shift the course of climate. Ash begins as molten rock, shattered by pressure and cooled into fragments. The particles are sharp-edged, tiny shards of glass and mineral. To breathe them is dangerous, for they cut into lungs, they settle into rivers, they choke engines, but lifted into the upper reaches of the atmosphere, far above where we walk, these same particles reflect and scatter sunlight. They soften the world's brightness, turning skies pale and sunsets crimson. The ash cloud is both peril and beauty, destruction and wonder, held in a single breath. Imagine a day when the sun grows dim, not because night has come, but because the earth itself has decided to shade its face. After a great eruption, the sky can remain hazy for weeks, months, even years. Travellers look upward and see a veil, a dome of strange light. At dawn, the horizon glows with deeper reds and purples, colours that painters try to capture but cannot quite match. At dusk, the same palette stretches across the heavens as though the sky has remembered fire and chosen to wear its embers as a crown. The ash paints not only clouds but memory itself, for generations may recall the years when the sun looked strange, when the sky was not as it should be. There are stories of such times written into history. After the eruption of Tambora in 1815, poets in Europe found themselves staring at sunsets unlike any they had known. The artist J.M.U. Turner captured skies of golden haze, streaks of orange and violet that seemed unearthly. Some believe that the vivid skies of that era, immortalized in paintings, were painted first by ash drifting from a mountain far away. The eruption had dimmed the sun, cooled the climate, and altered the colours of the heavens. Nature had become artist, using ash as pigment and the atmosphere as canvas. The result was both haunting and beautiful, a beauty born of disaster. But if the skies become beautiful, the ground below often suffers. Ash is heavy when it falls back to earth. It collapses roofs, buries crops, contaminates rivers. Inhaled, it injures lungs of animals and people alike. For farmers, a blanket of ash can mean starvation. For cities, it can mean collapse. The same particles that dazzle the eyes above can suffocate life below. And yet, in time, even this ash may become gift. Mixed into soil, broken down by rain and wind, it enriches the ground. Fertility returns. Forests sprout in fields once grey. Life takes what seemed a curse and turns it into nourishment. The cycle is not simple, but it is sure. Ash falls, life bends, and in bending finds strength. The most mysterious role of ash, however, lies in the sky it alters. Scientists study how volcanic ash, mingling with gases like sulfur dioxide, forms aerosols in the stratosphere. These tiny droplets are mirrors, scattering sunlight back into space. Their effect can cool the surface of the planet, tilting the balance of climate. It is this that makes supervolcanoes not only local disasters but global ones. The ash of Toba may have lowered global temperatures by several degrees, enough to strain ecosystems and challenge human survival. The ash of Yellowstone, should it rise again, could circle the globe, dimming skies from Asia to Africa, altering seasons, shortening harvests. A single eruption could become a painter not only of skies but of history, and yet in the calm between eruption and ash still whispers its story. In layers of rock, geologists find beds of ash that settled millions of years ago, each a chapter of past eruptions. They read these layers as historians read scrolls, tracing the rhythm of fire and silence through time. Some layers stretch across continents, evidence of eruptions so vast they defy imagination. These ancient ashes remind us that our present world was shaped by past skies, by light filtered through volcanic veils, by climates cooled and warmed again. The soil we till, the rivers we drink, the forests we wander, all may bear the quiet fingerprint of ash that fell long before our species began to dream. To imagine ash painting the sky is to imagine the earth itself as artist. Its palette is made of stone and fire, its brushstrokes carried by wind. The colours it chooses may frighten us or inspire us, but they remind us always of our planet's restless creativity. The beauty of a crimson sunset after eruption is inseparable from the sorrow of famine that may follow. In this tension lies the poetry of ash, that destruction and creation are not separate but entwined. The ash cloud is at once a shroud and a canvas, a warning and a wonder, and when we lift our eyes to such skies, we're invited to see both the peril and the art in Earth's breath. And so the story of ash that paints the sky is not only about geology or climate, it is about perspective. To live beneath such skies is to feel both fear and awe. It is to recognize that beauty can come from devastation, that memory can be coloured by both grief and wonder. It is to learn that the world we inhabit is alive, restless and expressive. the ash that dims the sun also writes poetry across the heavens, visible to every eye that dares to look upward. And in that shared gaze, across centuries and continents, we find a reminder that the earth is always more than we expect. An artist of fire, a poet of sky, a teacher of impermanence. To linger with the thought of volcanic ash is to realize that it is not only a fleeting veil across the sky, but a thread woven into the very memory of Earth. When ash drifts upward, it enters the stratosphere, far above the turbulence of weather. There it can linger, suspended for years, carried by global winds that circle the planet. Each particle is small, fragile, barely visible, yet together they spread across hemispheres. They alter the way sunlight touches the earth, softening its warmth, reshaping its seasons. It is astonishing to think that something as delicate as dust could hold such command over oceans, crops, forests, and even the survival of entire civilizations. When scientists study the history of climate, they often find signatures of volcanic ash hidden in the strangest of places. In layers of ice in Greenland and Antarctica, they uncover thin, dark bands, markers of ancient eruptions. Within these layers, tiny shards of volcanic glass glitter under microscopes, each a witness to skies painted long ago. The chemistry of these shards reveals their origin, some from Iceland, some from Indonesia, some from eruptions that no human eye ever saw. Yet their influence may have touched the ancestors of all humanity, dimming the sun, cooling the air, pressing life into narrow valleys of survival. Ash is thus a keeper of time, a messenger carried forward from eruptions we never knew. The impact of ash upon ecosystems is complex, shifting like light through mist. When it falls thick, it suffocates. Plants are buried, animals starve, rivers choke, but when it falls thin, it nourishes. The minerals within ash enrich soil, creating some of the most fertile lands on Earth. The rice paddies of Java, the vineyards of Italy, the forests of Japan, all grow in soil that was once ash. Farmers throughout history have both feared and revered volcanic landscapes, for the same ground that could destroy them in a moment could feed them for generations. This duality is at the heart of volcanic ash. It is both death and life, silence and song. And ash does not only shape land, it shapes minds. Cultures living near volcanoes often carry myths that echo the truth of ash in the sky. In some traditions, darkened skies are seen as the breath of gods, a sign of anger or renewal. In others, the strange colours of sunset are taken as omens or blessings. These myths are not mere superstition, they are memory encoded in story. They preserve the awe and the terror of past eruptions, ensuring that even when generations forget the details, they remember the warning. The mountain breathes, and its breath changes the sky. The painted heavens thus become both a canvas and a caution. One of the most haunting questions ash poses is about fragility. If a single eruption can cool the earth, disrupt agriculture, and alter rainfall, how secure is the balance of climate upon which we depend? Scientists debate whether the eruption of Toba may have nearly extinguished humanity, leaving only small, scattered groups to carry on. Whether or not this bottleneck was as severe as some suggest, the possibility is enough to remind us that survival is never guaranteed. Ash is a reminder written in the sky that life is precarious, that civilizations are delicate, and that adaptation is our oldest strength. At the same time, the beauty of ash cannot be denied. The sunsets after great eruptions are among the most vivid in recorded history. After Krakatoa erupted in 1883, Observers across the world described skies glowing with brilliant reds and violets. Painters captured them, poets described them, ordinary people stood in silence beneath them. The ash had turned tragedy into spectacle, grief into wonder. Such skies are paradoxical. They are born of suffering, yet they inspire awe. They show us that beauty and sorrow can inhabit the same moment, that the world is never one thing alone, but always a blend of contrasts. Ash also teaches us about the scale of interconnectedness. A particle rising from an eruption in Indonesia may drift across oceans and fall upon ice in Greenland. A veil formed over South America may dim the skies in Africa. In this way, ash ignores borders, nations, and human divisions. It is a reminder that Earth is whole, that its systems are linked. To breathe is to share the air shaped by distant mountains. To grow food is to depend on skies that may have been cooled by eruptions thousands of miles away. We are not separate from these cycles, but deeply enmeshed within them. There is something almost gentle in this lesson, though it is born of violence. Ash shows us that fragility is not failure but connection. It reminds us that small things matter. Just as particles suspended in air can cool the globe, so too can our smallest choices ripple outward. Ash is a mirror held up to humanity. Delicate, sharp, dangerous, beautiful, and transformative all at once. It carries within it the paradox of life itself, that what destroys also creates, what silences also speaks, what paints the sky also buries the ground. As we drift further into this thought, we might imagine ourselves standing beneath an ash-painted sky. The sun glows weakly, dimmed by a veil we cannot touch. The air feels different, cooler, softer. Colours at the horizon are deeper, stranger. In this light, the world feels dreamlike, as though we are living in a painting. And perhaps we are, for the earth has chosen this moment to show us its artistry, even as it tests our resilience. To accept both sides of this gift, the peril and the beauty, is to live in balance with a world that is never still, never entirely safe, but always deeply alive. In the end, volcanic ash is not only about eruptions, it's about memory, fertility, culture, and perspective. It paints not only the sky but the story of life itself. Each eruption leaves behind not just devastation but renewal, not just fear but wonder. And as long as humans have eyes to look upward, we will continue to read the skies, to see in their colours the breath of the earth, and to remember that we are living on a planet that is at once artist, destroyer, and poet. Ash, in its fragile grains, tells us all of this, if only we are willing to look and to listen. The story of ash is never finished in the moment of eruption, for ash lingers long after the fire has gone quiet. It drifts downward slowly, settling upon forests and rivers, layering fields, and collecting in the folds of mountains. Each grain becomes part of a new landscape, a quiet reminder of fire transformed into earth. To walk across land once buried in ash is to walk across a memory, for the soil beneath your feet carries both the silence of destruction and the promise of renewal. In time, what was once a suffocating blanket becomes the very ground upon which life flourishes again. When we think of ash painting the sky, it is easy to imagine only the haze and the dimmed sun. Yet in truth, the sky is only one part of the story. The other part is the life that rises afterward. Ash changes the chemistry of soil, releasing nutrients that were locked away in stone for ages. Rain mingles with it, carrying minerals downward. Seeds sprout, roots spread, and slowly the grey is replaced by green. Meadows emerge where desolation once lay. Birds return, insects buzz. Rivers carve paths through softened ground. In this way, ash writes not only upon the heavens but also upon the earth, a painter of skies and a sculptor of futures. The human relationship with ash is a delicate one. For those who live near volcanoes, ash is both enemy and ally. It brings famine when crops are buried, yet generations later it brings harvests richer than before. It collapses homes with its weight, but it also builds fertile valleys where civilizations can thrive. In Japan, in Italy, in Indonesia, entire cultures have been shaped by volcanic soil, by the gifts of eruptions long past. Their myths and their agriculture, their fears and their feasts, are all tied to the breath of ash. This is perhaps the truest reflection of volcanic ash. It binds us to cycles of loss and abundance, teaching us that what wounds can also heal. As centuries pass, the memory of ash is often carried more in culture than in sight. People may forget the details of an eruption, but they remember the strange skies, the lean harvests, the stories told at night of mountains that breathe. Ash, thus, becomes a part of folklore, a whisper of history that guides choices. Farmers choose where to plant by the richness of ash-laden soil. Poets describe sunsets deepened by invisible veils. Painters draw skies heavy with colours that came not from imagination, but from the atmosphere itself. In this way, ash teaches not only through destruction, but through inspiration, shaping both the material and the imaginative world. To look back across the arc of history is to see how ash has shaped the path of humanity itself. The eruption of Toba may have pressed early humans into small, vulnerable populations, perhaps influencing the course of our evolution. The eruption of Tambora reshaped economies, led to migrations and left cultural marks in art and literature. Krakatoa's ash circled the globe, changing skies in ways remembered for years. Each time ash was both obstacle and muse. It was a force that tested survival and a vision that etched itself into memory. And though we cannot choose when a volcano exhales, we can choose how we remember and how we learn. Ash also gives us perspective on scale. The layers found in ice cores and sediment are not measured in years but in millennia. Each thin band of ash marks a chapter in Earth's story, a punctuation of fire in the flow of time. Some bands are thick, evidence of global events. Others are faint, whispers of smaller eruptions. Together, they remind us that what we call stability is always temporary. The Earth breathes in cycles, and ash is one of its signatures, delicate yet enduring. It paints the sky for a season, but writes in the rocks for ages. What is fleeting to us is lasting to the planet, and in that difference lies humility. There is also something deeply poetic in the way ash changes light. Sunsets after eruptions are longer, deeper, painted with colours richer than ordinary days. These skies are gifts of contrast, moments when the world reveals a palette that is rare and fleeting. To witness such a sky is to hold both awe and awareness, to know that beauty can arise from catastrophe. Perhaps this is why so many artists have been captivated by post-eruption light. It is beauty inseparable from fragility, a reminder that all things are temporary and therefore precious. The ash-painted sky becomes a metaphor not only for nature but for life itself. As we reflect upon ash, we also reflect upon our own role in the larger balance of the Earth. Humanity now has the ability to alter the atmosphere in ways once reserved for volcanoes. The warming of the planet, the the scattering of particles from industry, the dimming of skies from pollution, all echo the lessons of ash. We see how delicate the balance is, how easily shifted, how globally connected, and perhaps in studying volcanic ash, we are not only learning about eruptions but also about ourselves, about the consequences of changing the sky, about the need to respect the canvas we all share. In the end, the story of ash that paints the sky is one of impermanence and renewal. It is a story of skies dimmed and then brightened, of lands buried and then reborn, of civilizations tested and then inspired. It shows us that even in destruction there is creation, even in silence there is song. The ash that falls to earth carries the memory of fire, but it also carries the seed of forests yet to come. The sky that glows strange colours after an eruption is a reminder that the world is alive, expressive, and endlessly changing. So let us imagine one final time standing beneath such a sky. The sun sinks, scattering rays through a veil of particles. The horizon glows crimson, violet, gold. The air is cool, touched by the breath of a mountain far away. In that moment, we feel both small and vast. Small in the face of Earth's power, vast in the gift of awareness that lets us see and marvel. The ash has painted the sky, and in its strokes we read not only the story of fire, but the story of life, resilience, and beauty born from impermanence. And as the colours fade into night, we carry that lesson quietly within us, that the earth is always more than we can see and always teaching us how to look. Smoke has always been a language, though we seldom think of it this way. It curls from fires in forests, it rises from the chimneys of homes, it drifts across landscapes as both warning and comfort. When the earth itself exhales smoke, however, the language changes. It is deeper, older, more mysterious, as though the planet is whispering its secrets into the air. Volcanic smoke is not only the breath of fire, but also a veil of chemistry. A mingling of gases that tells stories of what lies hidden below. To see smoke drifting from a vent or a fissure is to see the earth speaking in a voice of mist. When we imagine a supervolcano, we think of eruptions so vast they reshape climates and civilizations. Yet before such titanic events come whispers, smoke rising from hot springs, steam venting from cracks, sulphurous clouds drifting gently above the ground. These are the signals of heat and pressure moving beneath the crust, the quiet signs that magma stirs in its chamber. Scientists who study volcanoes learn to listen to this smoke. They measure its composition, trace its flow, and read it as one might read a pulse. For within smoke is not only the breath of fire, but also a warning, a reminder that beneath silence lies movement. The chemistry of volcanic smoke is both simple and profound. It is water vapour, the same breath we exhale, but also carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and traces of other gases. Some of these gases are invisible killers, heavy and suffocating in valleys. Others rise into the sky, reacting with sunlight and moisture to form tiny droplets that can cool the planet. To walk through such smoke is to feel the closeness of Earth's hidden heart, for the gases come directly from molten rock, carried upward by pressure. They are not symbols of fire, they are fire itself, transfigured into breath. And yet smoke is not always violent. In places like Yellowstone, it drifts peacefully from hot springs, carrying with it a scent sharp and strange, the smell of sulphur and stone. To stand among these plumes is to stand in the presence of deep time. The smoke is a reminder that the Earth is restless even when calm, that heat and water are forever entangled beneath our feet. Tourists take photographs, unaware that the haze they see is a fragment of the same system that could, in unimaginable ages, awaken as a supervolcano. What seems gentle is only one face of a force that carries both beauty and danger. Smoke also speaks to the imagination. Ancient peoples saw it as a sign of spirits, gods, or ancestors dwelling in mountains. They watched the smoke rising and wondered what beings lived within the earth, what messages were carried upward in the plumes. Some saw smoke as purification, the cleansing breath of a sacred fire. Others saw it as a curse, a warning that the ground beneath them was dangerous. In every interpretation, smoke was a voice and people listened. It shaped rituals, myths, and migrations. To live near smoking ground was to live in dialogue with the earth itself. The whispers of smoke are also recorded in the sky. When great eruptions send gases into the stratosphere, the smoke becomes global. Sulfur dioxide transforms into aerosols that reflect sunlight, cooling the earth. The whispers of a mountain become murmurs across continents. The world grows dimmer, colder, quieter. Scientists call this volcanic winter, but the phrase does not capture the strangeness of living beneath such skies. It is as though the earth has decided to cover its face to breathe not warmth but shadow. Smoke, in this sense, is not only a local phenomenon but a planetary one, carrying messages far beyond the horizon of its origin. There is something haunting in this thought, that smoke so mute and intangible can alter the fate of species. When Toba erupted 74,000 years ago, the smoke and gases it released may have cooled the planet enough to squeeze human populations to a fragile thread. If this is true, then we are all descendants of survivors who lived beneath ashen skies, who endured cold seasons and dim light, who learned to adapt when the earth whispered in smoke. The air we breathe now carries the memory of that trial, even if we do not feel it directly. We are, in some sense, children of smoke. To study volcanic smoke is also to study time in motion. Instruments measure the flow of gases day after day, year after year, looking for changes. An increase in carbon dioxide may mean magma is rising. A surge of sulfur dioxide may mean pressure is building. Scientists track these shifts the way a physician tracks a heartbeat, searching for signs of stress or stability. Each wisp of smoke becomes data, each plume a page in the story of a mountain's life. To collect such information is to translate whispers into knowledge, a delicate act of listening to Earth's breath. And yet, even with all our tools, smoke remains enigmatic. It drifts and disperses, it hides within wind, it changes with temperature and weather, it is both messenger and trickster. Sometimes it warns of eruptions that never come. Sometimes it conceals eruptions that arrive without warning. This uncertainty is part of the humility smoke teaches. We cannot control it, only observe it, respect it, and accept that we live upon a planet whose language is not always meant for our full understanding. Smoke is a reminder that mystery remains, that science is not about certainty, but about listening carefully to voices we do not fully know. Perhaps the most poetic truth about volcanic smoke is that it blurs boundaries. It is the place where earth and sky meet, where stone becomes air, where the hidden interior of the planet touches the atmosphere we breathe. In smoke, the underground becomes visible, the invisible becomes seen. It is a threshold, a liminal space where the familiar and the unknown mingle. To To watch smoke rise is to witness Earth crossing into sky, an intimate moment when the planet reveals itself, not in eruption, but in whisper. And in that whisper, we are reminded that the Earth is alive, speaking softly even when it seems silent. If ash is the Earth's paint, then smoke is its breath, and to follow its trails is to glimpse the dialogue between the hidden world beneath and the living world above. When smoke rises from fissures or craters, it does more than mark heat, it carries the chemistry of creation. Within its vapours are the building blocks that shaped our atmosphere long before life began. Scientists believe that in Earth's earliest days, volcanic smoke contributed gases that thicken the atmosphere, creating the warmth and protection necessary for oceans to form and for life to stir in their depths. In this sense, smoke is not just a whisper of destruction, but a reminder of our beginnings. Every breath we take may in part be traced back to those ancient exhalations of a restless planet. The living world responds to smoke in intricate ways. Plants nearest to fumaroles may wither from the gases, their leaves burned by invisible toxins, while others adapt to survive in soil enriched by volcanic minerals. Animals sense the fumes and avoid them, moving their herds to safer valleys, guided by instincts honed across millennia. Even humans, with all our technology, still feel the same primal caution when smoke rises from the ground. The acrid scent of sulphur triggers an unease that lies deeper than thought, echoing in the body's memory of danger. This instinct is not misplaced. Valleys that fill with carbon dioxide or sulfur dioxide from volcanic vents can silently suffocate anything living within them. Smoke, then, is not only a visible sign but a hidden threat, a reminder that what looks ethereal may hold immense weight. And yet, within this danger, there is beauty. Sunlight scattering through thin plumes of volcanic smoke creates halos and glows, turning landscapes into visions. At dawn, steam rising from geysers mingles with cool morning air, drifting in ribbons of silver across valleys. At dusk, smoke glows orange and red as the sun lowers, as though the earth is painting with its breath. These moments remind us that even warnings can be wondrous, that the planet's signs are not meant only to frighten but also to awaken awe. To watch smoke rising is to stand at the edge of two worlds, the calm we know and the fire we seldom see. The role of smoke in climate is subtle yet profound. While ash can cool the earth through reflection, gases like carbon dioxide warm it over long spans of time. Sulfur dioxide cools quickly but fades, while carbon dioxide lingers, accumulating in the atmosphere. Thus, volcanoes are paradoxical climate actors. In one breath they can cool the world for years, while in another they add to the long-term warming. Over geological ages, the balance of these breaths has shaped the climate in ways far beyond human influence. Some scientists believe that the great volcanic provinces of the past, the Siberian traps, the Deccan traps, released enough smoke and gas to drive mass extinctions, altering ecosystems and resetting the course of evolution. Smoke in these epochs was not merely whisper but thunder, changing the trajectory of life itself. For those who live near active volcanoes, smoke becomes part of daily existence. In Java, in Naples, in the shadow of Vesuvius or Merapi, people wake to the sight of plumes on the horizon. The sight may bring fear, but also familiarity. Smoke is part of the landscape, part of the identity of the place. Farmers cultivate fields enriched by past eruptions, even as they watch the mountain's breath with wary eyes. Children grow up hearing stories of ancestors who fled through smoke. or who rebuilt after it cleared. Communities weave resilience into their culture, learning to live with the whisper of Earth as both warning and blessing. In this way, smoke shapes not only climate but culture, becoming a thread in the tapestry of human meaning. The memory of smoke is not only cultural but geological. In ancient lava flows, scientists find vesicles, tiny bubbles left behind by gases that once filled the molten rock. These are fossilized breaths, moments of smoke captured forever in stone. In ice cores, trapped gases tell of eruptions long past, their composition preserved for scientists to read like letters from history. Even in sediments at the bottom of seas, layers of volcanic material carry the trace of gases that once changed skies. Smoke, in this way, is not as fleeting as it seems. Though it drifts and vanishes to our eyes, its essence is recorded in the deep memory of Earth, waiting to be uncovered and understood. Perhaps the most poignant truth about smoke is its duality. It is the messenger of both life and death, both beginning and end. Without volcanic smoke in the early Earth, there may have been no atmosphere thick enough to cradle life. Yet in later ages, it has dimmed suns, cooled climates, and contributed to mass extinctions. It is not a force of good or evil, but of balance, shifting the world from one state to another. To reflect upon this is to recognize that we too are part of these balances, fragile yet adaptable, temporary yet enduring. Smoke connects us not only to the fire below, but to the cycles of resilience above. To walk in a place where smoke rises is to feel suspended between worlds. The ground is alive beneath your feet. The air is alive around your body. You are reminded that the planet itself is breathing, that you are not walking on inert stone but on a living system, vast and complex. The smoke may sting your nose, blur your vision, and make your chest tighten, but it also deepens your awareness. It slows you down. It invites you to listen more carefully, to observe more gently, to accept that mystery surrounds you. In this way, smoke becomes not only a geological phenomenon, but a teacher of humility. And so the whispers continue. Some days they are faint, a thin veil above a hot spring. Other days they are bold, towering plumes rising into the sky, visible for miles. Whether subtle or dramatic, they remind us that the earth is never silent, that beneath apparent stillness lies motion, breath, and story. To live with smoke is to live with awareness, to accept that our world is alive, expressive, and unpredictable. And perhaps, in learning to listen to these whispers, we learn to live more gently ourselves, to attune our breath to the greater breath of the planet, and to find peace in the knowledge that we are part of something vast, mysterious, and endlessly alive. As the story of smoke drifts toward its close, we begin to see it not merely as a byproduct of fire, but as a voice of the earth itself. Smoke is transient, delicate, easily dispersed by winds, yet it holds within it the power to shape skies, climates, and lives. It rises from fissures as a whisper, but that whisper can circle the globe, altering the colours of sunsets and the temperatures of seasons. In its ephemerality, smoke teaches us about impermanence. In its influence, it teaches us about scale. To reflect on volcanic smoke is to realise that even what seems intangible can hold immense power, that fragility itself can be transformative. Smoke also reveals to us the intimacy of Earth's hidden processes. Beneath the crust, magma stirs in chambers vast as seas. Gases are dissolved in that molten rock like breath held underwater. When pressure builds, the gases escape, rising through cracks, seeping through vents, exhaling at the surface as smoke. What we see drifting into the air is not random vapor, but the planet's inner exhalation, a glimpse of its deep activity. To watch smoke rising from a caldera is to watch the Earth breathing, its inner world touching ours. This connection reminds us that the boundary between ground and sky is not absolute but porous, always exchanging, always alive. In the quiet aftermath of great eruptions, smoke lingers like memory. The skies it once dimmed clear again, the air returns to brightness and life resumes, but traces remain in layers of soil enriched by minerals, in layers of ice etched with sulfur, in stories carried forward by survivors. Smoke fades from view but not from consequence. It is a reminder that the world remembers even what seems to vanish. Our own lives mirror this truth. The words we speak, the actions we take may seem to drift and disappear, yet their effects ripple outward, shaping futures we will never see. Smoke is both metaphor and reality, a reminder that impermanence and legacy are intertwined. The resilience of life after smoke is perhaps the most profound part of its story. Forests buried in haze sprout anew when skies clear. Animals return guided by instincts stronger than memory. Humans rebuild, adapting to soils enriched by the volcanic breath. The very smoke that once choked lungs becomes, in time, part of the fertility that sustains future generations. There is a cycle in this. Destruction transforming into renewal, silence giving way to song. To recognize this cycle is to find comfort, to see that even the most unsettling whispers carry within them the seed of life to come. Culturally, smoke has always been a symbol that reaches beyond its physical form. It is the incense rising in temples, the signal fires guiding travelers, the plumes marking moments of change. Volcanic smoke, too, has inspired myth and reverence. Some saw it as the breath of gods sleeping in mountains, others as the anger of spirits beneath the earth. These stories, though varied, share a truth, that humans have always felt in smoke a message larger than themselves. It connects the earthly and the divine, the seen and the unseen. Even now, with scientific instruments and data, the sight of smoke rising from a volcano carries a weight that goes beyond measurement. It stirs something ancient in us, something that listens and remembers. As the earth continues its cycles, there will always be smoke. Sometimes gentle, drifting from hot springs and vents, soft enough to be almost ignored. Sometimes immense, rising in columns that darken skies and cool continents. In every form, smoke is a thread tying the deep interior of the earth to the fragile life upon its surface. To reflect upon it is to acknowledge both vulnerability and wonder. We are small, yes, but we are also witnesses, capable of awe, capable of adaptation, capable of seeing beauty, even in the haze of uncertainty. And so we close this story gently, with the image of smoke not as menace but as whisper. Imagine standing in a meadow within a caldera. Steam drifts upward from the ground, catching sunlight in pale halos. The air smells of sulfur, sharp but not overwhelming. The breeze carries the smoke across grasses, where elk graze untroubled. Above, the sky stretches wide and calm, clouds drifting slowly. In this scene there is no eruption, no disaster, only the quiet reminder that the earth is alive, breathing softly through its vents. The smoke rises, curls, disperses, and disappears into sky, and you, standing there, breathe deeply too, sharing in the rhythm of a planet that whispers even in its silence. Smoke, in the end, is a teacher of patience, humility, and transience. It tells us that nothing lasts forever, not fear, not catastrophe, not even beauty. All things drift, change, and transform, but within that drift lies meaning. Within that impermanence lies connection. The earth whispers in smoke, and if we are still enough, quiet enough, attentive enough, we may hear its message, that we are part of its breath, carried with it across time, fragile yet enduring, small yet significant in the vastness of its living story. Fire is a force we know as warmth. It glows in the hearth, it rises in the sun, it flickers in the torch that pushes back night. Yet in the deep story of the earth, there are moments when fire gives birth not to heat but to cold, when the planet's own burning heart exhales and paradoxically ushers in winter. This is the mystery of the supervolcano, that from its flame can come frost, from its eruption can come silence, from its breath can come a chill that spreads across continents. To think of a winter born of flame is to step into one of the strangest paradoxes of our living world. When a supervolcano erupts, its violence is beyond ordinary imagination. Columns of ash and gas rise tens of miles high, breaking into the stratosphere where winds circle the globe. It is here, in this thin and frigid layer of the atmosphere, that fire begins its transformation. The sulfur gases mingle with water vapour, forming aerosols, tiny droplets that act like countless mirrors, scattering sunlight back into space. The earth below, deprived of the full embrace of the sun, cools. Crops planted in spring find themselves struggling beneath autumn frost. Forests that once thrived in warmth endure longer shadows. The paradox unfolds. The hotter the eruption, the colder the world becomes. This strange phenomenon is known as volcanic winter. History has recorded its echoes. After the eruption of Tambora in 1815, the world entered what was called the Year Without a Summer. Snow fell in June in New England. Frost swept across Europe, ruining harvests. Famine spread in Asia as monsoons faltered. All of this from an eruption smaller than the titans we call supervolcanoes. If Tambora could cool the world for a year, then Yellowstone, Toba, or Taupo could change the climate for decades. Fire would give way to a season of ice, not local but global, not for days but for years. It is this vision that haunts scientists and poets alike, a winter that rises from flame. The consequences of such a winter ripple outward through life itself. Plants that rely on predictable cycles of sunlight and warmth falter when skies grow dim. Animals that follow migrations based on seasons find their rhythms broken. Humans, with fields to tend and mouths to feed, face shortages that strain societies. Food becomes rare, hunger spreads, conflict grows. Civilizations bound together in fragile networks discover how delicate their balance is when the sun itself seems withdrawn. Yet even in these struggles there is resilience. People adapt, they store, they migrate, they endure. A winter born of flame is harsh, but it is not the end. It is a chapter in the larger story of survival. The paradox of heat-creating cold is a reminder of how interconnected Earth's systems truly are. Magma, formed from molten rock deep within the planet, bursts forth in explosions of fire. That fire, rising as smoke and ash, alters the atmosphere. The altered atmosphere cools the land, reshaping ecosystems. In this chain of cause and effect, we see how tightly the planet is woven together. A breath from the Earth's depths becomes a chill in the air we breathe. A burst of fire becomes a shift in the cycles of rain and frost. The paradox is only apparent. In truth, it is harmony, a demonstration of balance at scales too vast for daily eyes to see. To imagine such a winter is to imagine skies dimmed not just for a day but for years. Sunsets would glow redder, days would feel muted, nights colder. The seasons would stumble, their patterns disrupted. Farmers might look to the heavens with unease, uncertain whether spring would bring warmth or shadow. Children might grow up under skies their grandparents would not recognize. The earth would feel altered, strange, as though wearing a veil. Yet in time the veil would lift, the aerosols would settle, the sun would shine clearly again, and life would resume its familiar rhythms. The winterborn of flame is temporary, but within its span lies the power to reshape entire generations. Scientists study this paradox not only as a curiosity, but as a window into the fragility of climate. Ice cores drilled from Greenland and Antarctica carry the signatures of past volcanic winters, thin layers of sulfur and ash that mark years of global chill. In these frozen records, they see the breath of Toba, the whispers of eruption long forgotten. They calculate the drop in temperature, the shifts in rainfall, the pressures upon ancient life. From this, they learn not only about the past, about possibilities for the future. For our world today is interconnected in ways it never was before. A winter born of flame in this age of global trade and billions of mouths would test us in ways unimaginable to ancestors who survived with fire and foraging alone. And yet there is more to this story than fear. Within the paradox lies a lesson, that even the most powerful forces of the earth follow cycles. The fire that darkens the sky eventually clears. The winter that follows eventually ends and life returns. Forests regrow in ash-rich soil, animals adapt to new climates, humans rebuild and remember. The very eruptions that bring hardship also fertilize valleys, create new lakes, sculpt new mountains. A winter born of flame is not an apocalypse but a transformation. A reminder that change, though painful, always carries the seeds of renewal. This is the rhythm of Earth, the slow breathing of a planet alive. So let us imagine standing in such a winter. The air is cooler, the light dimmer, the sky tinged with strange hues. Yet in the fields, shoots still push through soil, stubborn and green. In the forests, animals still move, searching for sustenance. In homes, fires still burn, warming hands and hearts against the chill. Life does not vanish. It bends, it endures, it waits. The paradox of flame giving birth to frost is not a contradiction but a truth of balance. The earth, in its vast creativity, writes stories in ash and smoke, in chill and warmth, in endings that become beginnings. And to live within this story is to recognize that we too are part of its resilience, carried through winters born of flame toward the return of light. The vision of a winter born of flame is not a tale confined to imagination alone. History, geology, and memory bear witness to its truth. Across centuries, eruptions smaller than supervolcanoes have already shown us glimpses of this paradox. When the Earth exhales vast amounts of ash and gas, the balance of sunlight and shadow tilts, and the planet cools. These events are like rehearsals for the greater dramas written into Earth's deep time. To study them is to see how even brief winters born of fire have shaped societies, altered economies, and shifted the path of life itself. The eruption of Tambora in 1815 remains the clearest window into this phenomenon. Its blast darkened skies across the globe, scattering light in ways that painted sunsets with hues never forgotten. But beneath that beauty was struggle. Crops failed in North America and Europe. Frost struck in summer months, turning fields barren. In China, famine spread as rice yields diminished. In India, altered monsoons brought cholera, which grew into a devastating epidemic. Literature too felt the touch of this volcanic winter. Mary Shelley, watching the dimmed skies and cold landscapes of Switzerland, found herself inspired to write Frankenstein, a story born of gloom and wonder. Art, science, and society all carried the fingerprint of a single eruption. If one mountain could write such marks into history, how much deeper would a supervolcano carve its memory into the human record? Beyond Tambora, Krakatoa in 1883 painted skies with brilliance so surreal that painters struggled to capture them. The sunsets glowed across continents, while the following years brought shifts in rainfall and temperature. Even the smaller eruptions of Mount Pinatubo in 1991 cooled the globe by nearly 0.5 degrees Celsius for several years, a reminder that the Earth's climate is more fragile and responsive than we often realise. Each event echoes the same paradox. That flame in rising skyward creates shadow and cold. Each time humanity adapts, but not without scars. Famines endured, migrations forced, economies shaken. The cycle is humbling, for it shows us that our control is limited, our resilience tested by forces far beyond human scale. The ecosystems of the Earth too bend beneath these winters of flame. Plants that thrive on sunlight must endure dimmer days and shorter growing seasons. Forests lose vigour, grasslands fade, and animals dependent on these systems face hunger. Migratory birds may find their patterns disrupted, seas cooled, fish populations altered. The chain of life stretches taut, showing its interdependence. Yet within this tension lies adaptation. Some species decline, others find opportunity. Mosses and lichens creep across cooled landscapes. Hardy plants take root in ash-enriched soil. Over decades, ecosystems reshape themselves, weaving new balances from the disruption. The winterborn of flame is not a death knell but a recalibration, a shift in the ongoing dialogue between life and Earth. What is most striking is the scale at which these winters remind us of connection. A mountain exhaling in one part of the globe may influence skies half a world away. Farmers in Europe may suffer harvest loss because of an eruption in Indonesia. Rainfall in Africa may falter because of a volcanic veil drifting from South America. We are bound together in these cycles even when we forget it. The Earth is not a collection of isolated regions but a single breathing system, and volcanic winters reveal this truth with startling clarity. They show us that we share one sky, one climate, one fragile web of sustenance. For humanity today, this lesson carries particular weight. Our global civilization is intricate, interdependent, and more vulnerable to disruption than ever before. In the age of satellites, air travel, and supply chains stretching across oceans, a prolonged volcanic winter would ripple through every nation. Crops grown in one region feed people in another. Economies rely on stability of seasons and predictability of trade. The dimming of the sun for even a few years could strain this delicate fabric, testing not only our resilience but our cooperation. In such a time, the memory of past volcanic winters may guide us. reminding us that adaptation is possible, but only if we accept our shared vulnerability and act together. Yet there is also beauty to be found in this paradox. The skies, though dimmed, glow with colours rare and haunting. Painters of the 19th century immortalised the post-eruption skies, their canvases streaked with reds and purples. Writers describe the eerie calm of snow in summer, the sense of living in a world transformed. Even amid hardship, people found inspiration, their imagination stirred by the strange new light. This duality, the suffering of famine and the beauty of painted skies, shows us the complexity of life under a winter born of flame. It is never only one thing, it is sorrow and wonder, despair and creativity, silence and song. Science continues to explore this paradox with care. Climate models simulate what might happen if Yellowstone or Toba erupted today. They predict years of cooling, disruptions in rainfall and shifts in monsoons. These simulations are not meant to frighten, but to prepare, to understand the scales at which life could be tested. At the same time, they reveal the potential for learning. By studying volcanic winters, we grasp how delicate our climate system is, how even small changes ripple outward. Some researchers even explore whether mimicking volcanic aerosols could help slow human-driven warming, but such ideas carry risk, for the same cooling that could ease heat might also disrupt rain and harm crops. The lesson of volcanic smoke and ash is not that we should control the sky, but that we should respect its fragility. The metaphor of winter born of flame stretches beyond science into philosophy. It teaches that contrasts are not contradictions but companions. Fire and frost, destruction and renewal, suffering and beauty, they arrive together, woven into the same story. To accept this is to live with greater patience and awareness. We cannot stop mountains from exhaling, but we can learn to see their breath as part of the rhythm of a planet alive. To live through such winters is difficult, but to recognize their place in Earth's long story is to find peace in the knowledge that even hardship carries meaning, even cold is born from warmth. And so, as we drift deeper into this tale, we see that the winter born of flame is not merely a threat, but also a teacher. It shows us fragility, but also resilience. It humbles us with scale, but also inspires us with beauty. It reminds us that the earth is alive, restless, and creative, always weaving new patterns of balance. When the fire of a mountain cools the sun, when warmth becomes frost, when life bends beneath shadow, we are reminded that we are part of something vast. We endure because life endures, and we marvel because beauty persists even in strangeness. This is the paradox, and this is the poetry of winters born of flame. The winter born of flame, though immense in its reach and heavy in its silence, is never eternal. Like the plumes of smoke that drift and dissolve, like the ash that settles into soil, its grip slowly loosens. The aerosols that once dimmed the sun fall back to earth, washed down by rain, absorbed into oceans, buried in sediment. The sky clears, light returns, and the rhythm of seasons begins to mend itself. What seemed like a lasting shadow proves to be a passing veil. In this cycle of darkness and renewal lies one of the deepest truths of our planet, that even its harshest trials are transient, that even its coldest winters carry within them the promise of spring. When warmth returns, it feels like a gift, though it is only the restoration of balance. Plants that endured in shadow begin to thrive again. Seeds that waited in soil sprout in bursts of green. Rivers swollen with snowmelt run fast, carrying nutrients across valleys. Animals follow these rivers, grazing on the renewed abundance. For humans, the return of clear skies brings both relief and resolve. Communities rebuild fields, replant crops, and tell stories of survival. These stories become part of cultural memory, passed down as warnings and wisdom. The earth breathes fire, and sometimes from that fire comes cold, but life always returns. To hold this memory is to walk with both caution and hope. In geological time, the scars of volcanic winters are written into landscapes. Caldera lakes glitter where eruptions once tore the ground apart. Valleys are filled with fertile soil enriched by ash. Forests cover slopes that were once barren. The land itself remembers, not as devastation but as transformation. To walk across such landscapes is to witness resilience in stone and soil, a testament to the patience of earth. The paradox of flame and frost is etched into every tree that grows in volcanic ground, every meadow that blossoms on cooled lava. These living landscapes remind us that what seems destructive in one moment can be creative in another. The human story within these winters is one of endurance. In every corner of history touched by volcanic chill, people adapted. They moved to warmer lands, shifted their crops, built stores for lean years, or turned to trade and cooperation. Famine and hardship came, yet survival persisted. From these trials, societies often emerged with new knowledge, new resilience, new myths. The memory of darkness carved itself into culture, shaping rituals, religions, and stories. Myths of dying and reborn suns, of long nights and new dawns, may echo faintly with the memory of volcanic winters. In this way, flame-born frost became not only a challenge to endure, but a lesson to remember. What is perhaps most profound about this paradox is that it mirrors our own lives. Just as the earth transforms fire into frost and then back into warmth, so too do our own struggles transform into growth. Hardship often cools the spirit, yet within that chill lies the seed of resilience. We endure dark seasons not because they are easy, but because endurance is part of life's rhythm. When warmth returns, when light floods back into the sky, we appreciate it more deeply, having lived through its absence. The winter born of flame thus becomes not just a geological event, but a metaphor for the cycles of human experience, where sorrow and joy, loss and renewal are inseparable. Science continues to seek clarity in this cycle, not only to understand the past but to prepare for the future. Satellites scan the skies for sulfur and ash, seismographs listen for tremors, ice cores reveal the memory of ancient winters. Each discovery deepens our understanding of how fire shapes climate, how frost reshapes ecosystems, how life bends but does not break. With this knowledge comes humility. We cannot prevent the next great eruption, but we can learn to live with awareness, to prepare with foresight, to respect the scale of forces that remind us of our place in the web of Earth. There is also a quiet beauty in imagining the closing of such a winter. The first spring, after years of dim light, would feel miraculous. Sunlight would seem brighter than memory, warmth sweeter than before. Communities would celebrate harvest not as routine but as grace. Children born after the winter would grow up in a world their parents had almost forgotten, a world of clarity and colour. The earth, through its cycles, would have reminded humanity of fragility, but also of renewal. It would have shown us once more that loss and return are woven into the fabric of existence. As the winter born of flame fades, what remains is not despair but perspective. The Earth has endured such cycles for millions of years, and life has always returned, reshaped but alive. We, as part of that life, are bound to the same truth. To live on this planet is to live within cycles larger than ourselves, cycles of creation and destruction, warmth and cold, silence and song. To accept this is to find peace, not in control, but in belonging. The flame and the frost are not enemies, but partners in a dance that has no end, only transformation. And so the story closes softly. Imagine a meadow where snow once lingered too long, now bright with flowers. Imagine a forest where trees stretch upward, their roots deep in volcanic soil. Imagine a family gathered by a fire, no longer fearful of the dim sky, but grateful for its clearing. The winter has ended, the flame has cooled, and life continues. The paradox has revealed itself as truth, that even from fire frost may come, and even from frost life will rise again. To hold this understanding is to walk gently on the earth, to listen to its rhythms, and to remember that every winter carries within it the memory of flame and the promise of spring. There are moments when the earth speaks not in a single voice but in echoes, where one sound carries another, where one breath becomes both warmth and chill. Supervolcanoes are masters of such echoes. They roar in fire, yet their cry lingers in frost. They burst forth with heat, yet their shadow is cold. This is the paradox written into their story, a duality that stretches across landscapes and time. To listen to these echoes is to hear the earth reminding us of its balance, the strange harmony between flame and silence, between heat and shadow. When a volcano erupts, the first sensation is fire. Rivers of molten rock surge outward, lighting valleys with a glow fierce enough to turn night into day. The air trembles with heat, forests ignite, and rivers boil. To stand anywhere near such a force is to feel the presence of Earth's heart exposed, unrelenting. But soon, the second voice emerges, the echo. Ash rises, gases spread, the sun dims, and cold settles in. From the same eruption that seared landscapes comes the frost that silences fields, that shortens summers, that stretches winters. The mountain speaks twice, once in heat, once in shadow. This echo is not metaphor alone. It is measured in degrees, in seasons, in years. Scientists studying past eruptions have traced how temperatures fell across continents, how monsoons shifted, how oceans cooled. The warmth that birthed the eruption left a trail of cold that lingered long after the fires had gone out. October's eruption may have sent humanity itself into near extinction, a few thousand survivors carrying forward the fragile flame of our species. The echoes of that event still shape us, not only in genetics but in the myths of great darkness, of long nights, of worlds reborn after silence. Heat and cold, flame and frost are not opposites here but intertwined echoes, inseparable in the memory of Earth. These echoes move beyond climate into the heart of ecosystems. Animals fleeing the fires of eruption may later face the hunger of shortened summers. Forests burned in flame may later wither under frost. Yet life bends, always bending, always seeking balance. In the ashes, new soil is born, enriched with minerals. In the chill, only the hardiest survive, yet those survivors carry the seeds of future abundance. The echoes shape not only who perishes, but who thrives, sculpting evolution itself. Each cycle of heat and shadow becomes a teacher, showing life how to adapt, how to endure, how to find resilience in fragility. For humanity, the echoes of heat and cold have always been both threat and revelation. In the past, a volcanic winter could mean famine, migration, even the collapse of entire cultures. Yet it also inspired stories, art, and memory. People looked to dimmed skies and saw omens, gods, or portents. They carried these echoes forward as myths of dying suns, of cold seasons sent as punishment or renewal. In every story lies the trace of truth, that the earth speaks in echoes, and that survival requires listening. Even now, with satellites and seismographs, we find ourselves humbled by the same paradox our ancestors faced. We may measure more precisely, but the duality remains. Warmth that creates shadow, fire that becomes frost. The echoes of heat and cold also remind us of scale. To us, a decade of cooling feels immense, a disruption across a lifetime. To the earth, it is a brief refrain, a pause between longer movements in the music of climate. The echoes fade, the warmth returns, life continues. Yet for those who live within them, the experience is transformative. A child growing up during a volcanic winter will see skies unlike any their grandparents knew, will feel summers that never fully arrive. Their memories will carry the echo, shaping how they see the world, how they tell its story. The echoes become personal as well as planetary, woven into human experience as deeply as into climate records. To imagine echoes is to imagine listening with patience. They're not sudden, they linger, stretching beyond the moment of eruption. The warmth of fire lasts hours or days, but its shadow can last years. The duality of this rhythm is a reminder that consequences stretch far beyond beginnings. When the earth exhales in fire, it does not stop when the flames cool. It continues to speak softly but insistently, in the veils of sky, in the chill of seasons, in the quiet transformation of ecosystems. To live within these echoes is to live with the awareness that our world is never still, that every beginning carries with it a long unfolding. And so, to stand at the edge of a caldera is to stand at the threshold of echoes. Beneath your feet lies magma, heat beyond imagining. Above your head stretches sky, fragile and open to change. Between them is you, listening. The earth may not erupt in your lifetime, but the echoes of past eruptions still shape your present. The fertile soil you plant, the climate you inherit, the myths you tell. The mountain speaks in flame, but it also whispers in shadow. To listen to both is to hear the full voice of earth, the echoes of heat, the shadows of cold, and the balance they weave together across time. The paradox of echoes becomes clearer when we trace the long memory of Earth. Every great eruption leaves behind more than ash and stone. It leaves an echo that lingers in climate, in soil, in story. Scientists uncover these echoes in layers of ice and sediment. In Greenland, thin bands of sulfur reveal years when the skies were veiled and summers were faint. In Antarctica, trapped air bubbles whisper of centuries past when the breath of mountains circled the globe. In lake beds, layers of volcanic dust show moments when heat and frost arrive together. These records tell us that the Earth remembers even when we forget, that every eruption carries a shadow that outlasts the flame. Life too carries these echoes. Consider the forests that grow upon volcanic ground. Their roots sink into soil enriched by ash. Their leaves stretch towards skies once dimmed by smoke. Each tree is an echo of fire transformed into nourishment. Animals graze upon grasses fed by volcanic minerals, carrying within their bodies the legacy of flame. Even humans, cultivating fields upon these soils, are shaped by these echoes, whether or not they recognize it. The bread on a table in Naples, the rice in Java, the wine in Chile, all may be flavored by volcanic soil, nourished by echoes of past eruptions. We eat from the shadow of fire, we live from the gifts of its transformation. Yet echoes are not always gentle. For centuries after Toba's eruption, the Earth may have remained cooler, its ecosystems strained. Human populations, already small, faced a narrowing corridor of survival. Some scientists argue that we emerge from this bottleneck changed, not only genetically but culturally, our myths and rituals infused with memory of darkness and cold, tales of dying suns, of long nights, of fiery gods may be distant echoes of skies dimmed by ash. We cannot prove these links with certainty, but they resonate. Myths, like sediments, hold memory. They carry the weight of echoes, shaped into story and song, guiding generations long after the skies have cleared. The echoes of heat and cold also ripple into oceans. When volcanic aerosols cool the atmosphere, seas absorb the change. Currents shift, monsoons falter, rainfall patterns stumble. Coral reefs, sensitive to even small variations, may bleach or bloom differently. Fish populations shift in distribution, affecting not only ecosystems but human communities who depend on them. Farmers on land and fishers at sea alike feel the echoes of eruptions they may never see. Their lives bent by forces rising from mountains far away. This is the reach of echoes. They extend beyond sight, beyond imagination, linking distant worlds through the some shared language of climate. For modern humanity, these echoes are both warning and teacher. We have built a civilization of immense complexity, a web of trade, technology and communication that binds billions together. But this very interconnectedness makes us vulnerable. An eruption in one place could ripple across the globe, cooling harvests in one hemisphere, shifting rainfall in another, grounding air travel, disrupting economies. The echoes of fire and frost would be felt everywhere. Scientists simulate these possibilities not to inspire fear but to cultivate foresight. By studying the echoes of past eruptions, we prepare for echoes yet to come, understanding that resilience requires both knowledge and humility. And yet, within this fragility lies creativity. Past volcanic winters inspired art that still captivates us. Turner's paintings of fiery skies after Tambora, Mary Shelley's dark imaginings in Frankenstein, the strange poetry of dimmed suns in countless myths, all are human responses to echoes of fire. Even in hardship, imagination bloomed. The echoes of heat and shadow became muses, shaping how humanity expressed itself. Perhaps this is one of our greatest strengths, the ability to turn trial into meaning, echo into story, shadow into beauty. In this way, the paradox is mirrored in us. We too create light from darkness, warmth from cold. To think of echoes is also to think of patience. A volcanic eruption is a moment of violence, sudden and fierce. Its echoes, however, are slow, stretching across years, decades, sometimes centuries. To live through them requires endurance. To remember them requires story, and to understand them requires science. These layers of patience, life enduring, cultures remembering, scientists studying, are themselves echoes of resilience. The mountain speaks once in flame, but humanity responds in generations. carrying its voice forward long after the ground has cooled. The dialogue between Earth and life is thus not immediate but enduring, a conversation that unfolds across ages. Perhaps the most profound lesson of these echoes is that they reveal the inseparability of opposites. Fire and frost, warmth and cold, destruction and renewal, none exist alone. The eruption is not finished when the fire fades. It continues in the frost that follows. The winter is not complete in its chill. It is shaped by the warmth that gave it birth. The echoes remind us that we live in a world of dualities, not absolutes. They teach us to see beyond the surface, to recognize that every shadow carries light, every silence carries sound, every ending carries a beginning. To listen to the echoes of volcanoes is to learn the deeper rhythm of existence. And so, as we move deeper into this story, we find ourselves standing at the threshold of perspective. The mountain has spoken, the echoes linger, and we are the listeners. We measure, we adapt, we remember, we create. The warmth of eruption and the chill of aftermath both shape us, reminding us that we are not outside of Earth's story but inside it, participants in its rhythms. The echoes continue, soft and persistent, whispering across climates, across species, across time. And as we listen, we begin to hear not only the voice of Earth, but the harmony of our place within it. The echoes of heat and shadows of cold do not vanish when the eruption ends. They linger in memory, in soil, in sky, in story. To walk across the surface of Earth today is to walk across landscapes moulded by echoes long past. The fertile plains of Java, the vineyards on Vesuvius, the lakes of Toba and Taupo, all are remnants of ancient fires, cooled and softened by time. They carry the dual legacy of warmth and frost, of destruction and renewal. Life grows here not in spite of echoes, but because of them, nourished by soils enriched with minerals, shaped by climates shifted in rhythm with fire. The earth, in its paradoxical voice, continues to whisper through every forest, every field, every horizon. The human story is inseparable from these echoes. We are, in some sense, children of volcanic winters. Our ancestors endured nights darker than expected, harvests that faltered, migration forced by changing skies. They carried with them not only the scars of hardship, but also the strength of survival. From those long nights came myths of rebirth, of suns that die and return, of gods who breathe fire and shadow. From those dimmed summers came stories of endurance, of humanity persisting, even when the earth seemed to turn against it. We are heirs to these memories, shaped not only by the warmth of hearths, but also by the chill of skies painted with volcanic breath. Science gives these echoes another form of permanence. In ice cores drilled from Antarctica, in sediments settled in oceans, in tree rings that show narrow growth during cold years, we find the fingerprints of eruptions. These records are not just data, they are echoes preserved in matter itself, the Earth's diary written in frost and wood. They remind us that what seems fleeting is not forgotten, that the breath of a volcano can be traced thousands of years later in the chemistry of a glacier. The Earth records its own story, and in learning to read it, we discover our place within it. Each echo becomes a reminder that our time too will be written into the layers of the planet. And yet the most profound echoes are not in stone or ice, but in perception. To live through dimmed skies is to feel the fragility of the world in a way that cannot be undone. Generations that endured volcanic winters knew this fragility deeply. They understood that abundance is never guaranteed, that light can falter, that survival depends on patience and adaptation. These truths echo through culture, shaping values of resilience, humility, and reverence. They are whispers carried forward not only in myths, but in attitudes toward land, toward seasons, toward the mysteries of existence. The echoes of flame and frost thus live within us, shaping our consciousness as much as our environment. The duality of heat and cold carries a lesson for the present as well. Just as fire can bring frost, so too can our own actions ripple into unintended consequences. We change the atmosphere with industry and energy, altering climates in ways reminiscent of volcanic breath. The echoes remind us that the balance of Earth is delicate, that even small shifts can ripple across oceans and skies. To heed this lesson is to recognize our responsibility. We are no longer only witnesses to echoes, but creators of them. The warmth we generate carries its own shadows, and the choices we make will shape the echoes heard by generations yet to come. Still, within this responsibility lies hope. The story of echoes is not one of endings, but of cycles. Fire creates frost, frost gives way to renewal, and life continues. Every echo fades, but its influence becomes part of something larger. To see this is to see that resilience is not accidental but intrinsic to life. The forests that return after eruptions, the civilizations that rebuild after winters, the children who grow under skies their parents feared, these are all testaments to the enduring balance of the earth. The echoes do not silence life, they deepen it, giving it texture, rhythm, and meaning. To imagine the closing of this story, picture a horizon after years of dimmed skies. The sun breaks through more clearly than before, its light scattering across fields of green that rise from once grey soil. Rivers sparkle, carrying melted snow down into valleys where crops grow strong again. People gather, not in fear but in gratitude, remembering the shadow while celebrating the return of warmth. In their songs and their stories, the echoes remain, not as terror but as wisdom. The earth has spoken in fire and frost, and humanity has listened, endured, and learned. And so the final lesson of echoes is one of belonging. We are not separate from these rhythms but woven into them. The heat of eruption and the chill of aftermath shape not only landscapes but lives, not only climates but cultures. They remind us that we are fragile yet resilient, temporary yet enduring, small yet part of something vast. The earth speaks in echoes, and we, by listening, become part of its song. Heat and shadow, flame and frost, destruction and renewal. All are notes in the music of a living planet. The story ends not with silence but with continuation, for even now, beneath our feet, magma stirs, gases rise, whispers drift upward as smoke and steam. The next eruption will come in years or in centuries, and with it new echoes of warmth and cold. But this is not cause for fear alone. It is a reminder that we live on a planet alive, expressive, and creative. Its echoes shape us, but they also invite us to marvel. To look at a sunset tinged with volcanic dust, to walk across fertile volcanic soil, to breathe the air shaped by the distant mountains. This is to live within the poetry of Earth. And in that poetry we find not despair but wonder, not ending but endercore carrying us forward through time.